Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise on Standing Order number 46-2A to make a statement regarding the current situation on maize buying by the National Cereals and Produce Board in the North Rift, Uasin Gishu County in particular, but I'll touch the rest in general. Mr. Speaker, I'm standing to give this statement knowing very well that according to the Constitution, Schedule 4, agriculture is devolved except for policy on agriculture and policy on veterinary, meaning that, Mr. Speaker, this House must be seized of any issue that arises when it comes to agriculture. Mr. Speaker, I come from Uasin Gishu County, as all are aware, an area that has suffered a lot, and we have, and honorable members have seen a lot of complaints and a lot of debates in the media about the maize buying. Mr. Speaker, I want to update this House on the current situation. The current situation, Mr. Speaker, is that farmers deliver their produce to the National Cereals and Produce Board, NCBB, as usual. But as we are talking, the majority of farmers have not been paid, those who have delivered. Notwithstanding the fact that, Mr. Speaker, the stores were opened this season in a very irregular manner. Mr. Speaker, the National Cereals and Produce Board, according to the farmers and those of us from the region, mishandled the receiving of maize, resulting in very long queues and often closed the cereals storage, making farmers go back with their produce. Mr. Speaker, there are situations where farmers found themselves at a loss because everybody sells in order to pay school fees for their children, and also we sell in order to buy inputs for the next season. And this season, the season 2017 to early 2018, was completely complicated by the way the cereals were handled in North Rift in particular. Large-scale farmers, in some instances, had to rescue small-scale farmers by buying off the produce, and hence we found some of the large-scale farmers that we have being named as cartels. And yet we know some of them were actually rescuing the small-scale farmers who could not afford to send their children to school. We also have, in fact, children who have dropped out of universities, while farmers are owed a lot of money. Mr. Speaker, a lot of farmers currently still have their produce in the stores because of the same delivery frustrations. And one situation that has taken place is that NCBB has stopped collecting maize as we are talking. So all stores have been closed nationally. This has created another problem and raised a number of questions because the complications and the frustrations in delivery led to actually very little produce being delivered. I want to say without fear of contradiction that only about 30% of the farmers actually delivered their produce. The Ministry of Agriculture has told us that the investigations are going on, and in the preliminaries we are informed that actually the produce that was received, because there is a claim by NCPB that the stores are full. The ministry has claimed that the stores were filled by non-farmers, which is another question that needs to be looked at, because if they are filled by non-farmers, it therefore means that the privilege of selling maize at 3,200, which was given to farmers, may have been enjoyed by non-farmers. And this is something that this House must take note of. There are therefore a number of observations and questions that we have raised, and we had a wonderful meeting yesterday between the leadership of Uasin Gishu and parts of North Rift, actually, and the farmers. Some of the observations that we made, Mr. Speaker, is that the storage capacity of the National Cereals and Produce Board is normally over 20 million. And yet, the number of bags that were collected from the farmers as per the data, and this figure of 1.9 billion shillings, shows that not even a third of the cereals can be of the space in the cereals port can be accounted for through the amount that has been paid. So it leaves you wondering why the payments are much less than the space, the capacity of cereals board. So is it possible that there is maize in the stores that was either donated or maize that came before this season? We are aware also, Mr. Speaker, that there was an opportunity that was given because of the shortage of 2017, and an opportunity was given for importation. And the crops that were, the grains that were imported were zero-rated. Now, that importation was supposed to protect the food security as well as the millers. That privilege was supposed to have ended in October 2017. We realized that that did not end. The delivery of produce continued. In fact, there is suspicion that it went up to January, but that I will leave because I think our committee, the reason I'm presenting this is that we need our Committee of Agriculture to actually delve into the whole thing. So, but it is true that deliveries from what was exported went beyond October to December, actually. So the question is, how was that authorized when the subsidized was supposed to have stopped at that time? Mr. Speaker, it has left us with a lot of worries and a lot of questions, and when we met as leaders and farmers in Uasin Gishu yesterday, we made a number of resolutions and requests to government. Number one was that the true farmers be identified and that they should be paid for the crops that they have delivered. This is very, very, very urgent, because the farmers who have delivered cannot even plant. We know that one of the big four is food security. Mr. Speaker, you might not see the food that we are talking about in the next year. Our farmers are faced with an infestation of the armyworm, for those who have just planted. So the armyworm, coupled with the fact that a lot of land has been left idle and has not been planted, is going to bring a problem in this place. So we are appealing to government that because it has been identified that the wrong people were paid, that the real ones are now paid so that they have their money and that their children can go to school. Also, we are appealing to government that they must collect the remaining grain that is with the farmers. Farmers in this country are planting not for themselves, but for the security of the food security of the country. And if they have grains in the stores, and I dare say I also still have mine in my grain stores, it is very important that this is delivered. So one of the resolutions we passed was that farmers must therefore be allowed to deliver whatever they still have. That might help next year's crop, Mr. Speaker, because as I said, this year's crop, nobody knows what we are going to harvest. The rains were there, late planting, the armyworms, and the fact that people didn't have inputs. Actually, some of the crops were planted without fertilizer because the same farmers are still suffering. Mr. Speaker, we also think that there is need, and we strongly believe that there is need to do the investigation that government has initiated, and as leaders and farmers, we truly support what government is doing, and that investigation must be very thorough. And when we say investigation must be very thorough, we want a list of everybody who delivered maize in this season, late 2017 and early 2018, the full list. Because the list that we saw of 19 was a very small list. It was not even accounting for 30% of the crop that was delivered. So it is telling us nothing. We would like to see that full list so that all of us are satisfied that on who actually delivered. We are also saying that when we are dealing with this audit, the issue of millers has to be done. The millers themselves must be audited. When did they use the privilege that was given to them? And for how long was the privilege used? Because we have not had, in all this fiasco, we have not had any complaint from any miller, which means the millers are also having full stores. And that is why cereals cannot release space for the farmers who still have the grain. Unfortunately, I'm also the farmer, and I'm a victim like everybody else. But I'm finishing, Mr. Speaker, that we have discovered that there is need to have thorough audit, and in this thorough audit, we would like a few things to be unearthed. Let's unearth who actually supplied. Let's unearth who delivered. Let's unearth when the exports expired and when it was stopped in reality. Mr. Speaker, we think the government also should devolve the National Cereals and Produce Board. This is going to be very important for us as a Senate. I think we need to cut the farmers at the county level because it is not a policy issue, it's an implementation issue, it's a management issue of the produce that we have, and that is something that we feel very strongly that we should do. And Mr. Speaker, as that is happening, our plea is that the farmers be allowed to deliver what they still have, and more than that, that they be paid for what they have delivered. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.